guess all the loud ones are gone today.
No, we're not.
Well, happy Father's Day, everybody. Glad to see y'all here today. And I was talking earlier about how kind of comical it is. On Mother's Day, the church is always full. On Father's Day, always empty. I don't know where everyone's dad goes to church, but it's not here. So I'm going to turn this microphone on, and hopefully it works without any pops or craziness. I hit that button, and that should... He's got it. All right. Being a dad is... We're going to talk about dads today, because I feel like if you don't, they kick you out of being a pastor. You got to talk about what's on the agenda. Being a dad is what we're going to talk about, and it's not an easy thing to do. Not an easy thing to do because kids are, well, you've seen our kids run around, and sometimes they can be trying. Many of you have had little ones or little grandkids. I hope you don't have little grandparents. So. Little grandkids that run around, and they are real. Sometimes you have to try not to laugh, even though you know you really need to just spank the kids. I mean, but sometimes it's just so funny. Ryan and I have lots of times where we have to get on to the kids, but we start laughing too much. So when the other one has to step in, we have to tag team because some of the stuff, especially with Eli, is just hilarious. And there was a story I wanted to share with you guys. There's this thing, I don't know, I mean, people have always done this. They just have words for it now, but it's called sleep training. And it's where you have to teach your kid to go to sleep on their own. Because kids actually don't know how to do that. And that's why taking a pacifier away can be such a big deal, because that's their mechanism on how they go to sleep. It's soothing, and it helps them put themselves to sleep. And kids go through these, what they call sleep regression, where they may be going to sleep. You can lay them down, they'll go right to sleep, and just randomly, a few months later, they'll just forget how to do that. And it happens, and you kind of have to sleep train the kids, which is awful. Awful, trying to teach them to lay down and go back to sleep. It's exhausting. And there was a dad whose wife, he and his wife, the mom, had been trying to get their 3-year-old back to sleep. He just all of a sudden decided he didn't want to go to sleep. And the mom had been doing the brunt of the work, and she comes in one night, and she says, I've been doing this for 14 straight days. The child does not go to sleep. It's your turn. I'm going to bed early. The dad says, like all dads do, I can do this. I got this. He walks in there. He tells the little boy, he says, we're going to bed now. Get in bed, and you're going to go to sleep. And the little kid says, Dad, I'm thirsty. Dad says, you had time to get a drink. It's time for bed. You're not going to distract me. Go to bed. The little boy gets in bed. The dad kisses him on the forehead, turns out the light, shuts the door. He sits down in the living room, and he hears, Dad, I'm thirsty. Dad doesn't respond because he doesn't want to engage the kid. He'll wake up. He just keeps hearing it. The kid just keeps saying it. The dad finally, we all know how dads are, right? You can push dads to a certain point, and then you're going to get a whooping. That's how that works. And the dad gets frustrated. He says, go to sleep. You're not getting a drink. I don't want to hear about it. The kid sits there for a while. The dad thinks he's got it, but then he hears it again. Dad, I'm thirsty. I'm thirsty. I want water. The dad finally has had it. And he says, just as loud as he can, boy, I'm about to get up and come in there and spank you. To which the little boy replied, when you come in here to spank me, can you bring me some water? That's never happened to us, but I'm sure it will soon. Dads have a lot of responsibilities. And being a dad is different than being a mom. The roles are different. God designed them that way on purpose. And He designed us differently on purpose. Men and women think differently. We behave differently. We have different gifts, different things that each of us are good at because God designed us to exist in a complementary state. There are two different ways that theologians and people look at the sexes, the genders, there's egalitarian, where they believe that both are equal, and then there's complementarian, which is what I personally lean towards, where I believe that we are both equal in salvation, equal in love and worth to God, but we were designed to be different on purpose, and that God, that's why the existence of the concept of coming together to make one flesh, because it takes two of us to not kill our kids sometimes, and it takes two of us to make it through a lot of the things that go on. And moms are very, very different, and dads kind of sometimes get the dads sometimes have to be the bad guys. Sometimes they have to do things that the moms don't want to do, and dads kind of get stuck with a lot of different responsibilities that nobody likes to talk about a whole lot. But we appreciate what most dads do. They provide, they protect, they usually are the source of discipline. They're sometimes the source of instruction. Hopefully they love you. And doing all those different things all has to be done evenly and perfectly for each child, even though your children are completely different people, each and every one of them. And we're going to talk about a really great example of a great dad in the Bible, except it comes from a parable. It's a parable you've all heard a zillion times, the prodigal son. But today we're going to talk about the Un-Prodigal Dad. And so go ahead and flip to the book of Luke chapter 15. And Jesus tells 3 parables in a row here. 1, 2, 3, knocks them out. And they all have to do with something being lost. The first one is a lost sheep. The second one is a lost coin. And the third one is a lost son. And so he talks about 3 different stories where something was lost and somebody had to go and find, or there's a reunion and a turning around and a repenting. And everybody in this room, I know y'all have heard this story 100 million times. And I'm not going to rehash every little detail about the son. We know the son was rotten. We know that he was selfish, and we know that he was sinful. And we know that it took him hitting rock bottom to realize how much he had screwed things up. But what we're going to talk about are 3 different characters in this story. Because there's the dad, there's the prodigal son, and there's his jerk brother, who was so aggravated that his dad threw a party that he didn't even. We'll get to that. Let's look at verse 11 through 32. In the book of Luke, chapter 15, verse 11 through 32, it says, "And he said," talking about Jesus, "a man had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of the estate that falls to me.' So he divided his wealth between them. And not many days later, the younger son gathered everything together and went on a journey into a distant country, and there he squandered his estate with loose living. Now when he had spent everything, a severe famine occurred in that country, and he began to be impoverished. So he went and hired himself out to be one of the citizens of that country, and he sent him into the fields to feed swine. And he would have gladly filled his stomach with the pods that the swine were eating, and no one was giving anything to him. But when he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired men have more than enough bread? But I am dying here with hunger. I will get up and go to my father, and will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me as one of your hired men.' So he got up and came to his father, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him, felt compassion for him, and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his slaves, Quickly, bring out the best robe and put on him, and put a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet, and bring the fatted calf, kill it, and let's eat and celebrate. For this son of mine who was dead has come to life again. He was lost and has been found,' and they began to celebrate. Now the older son, who was in the field, when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. And he summoned one of the servants and began inquiring what these things could be. And he said to him, Your brother has come home, and your father has killed the fattened calf, because he has received him back safe and sound. But he became angry, and he was not willing to go in. And his father came out and began pleading with him. But he answered and said to his father, "Look, for so many years I have been serving you, and I have never neglected a command of yours. And yet you have never given me a young goat, so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your wealth with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him?" And he said to him, "Son, you have always been with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice, for this brother of yours was dead, and he has begun to live, and was lost and has been found." What an amazing kind of story. A parable is a story that was, it's this microphone. We're going to have to figure out what's going on with that pretty soon. A parable is a story that's told in earthly context that has a very heavenly meaning. And I'm going to break it down for you really fast and simple. The Father is God. In this context, the parable talks about a son that is lost and goes away. And that could be referring to children of Israel. It could be referring to Gentiles. But we definitely can all agree that the one son is definitely the nation of Israel, the son that stayed. And we can see parallels in how the high priests and the religious establishment reacted to Jesus as he began to preach and teach to sinful people. They were like, "Ooh, gross. Why are you hanging out with tax collectors and prostitutes?" They were resentful, just like this guy in the story was. But there are some things that I want you guys to kind of be aware of. Because the real main character, the most beautiful character in the story is the Father. First off, the son puts the dad in a bad spot. Because when you're a dad of a young men are sometimes stupid. I was a young man once, and guess who was stupid? All of you who were young men, which is all of us, were stupid too when you were young. This guy has some sort. Young men are always coming up with ideas and schemes. This guy came up with some brilliant idea where he's going to demand, which was a legal thing you could do as a son in a Jewish culture, you could ask for your inheritance. So he goes to his dad and he's like, "Dad, I want to cash out." How do you think that father felt? His heart was probably destroyed. But how do you help your son grow to become a man? Sometimes you got to let him crash. And the dad took the money that he had worked his whole life to earn, and he cashes that son out and gives him his share of the inheritance, which was a sizable amount of money. And it even says that the kid hung around for a couple days, and then he's like, "I'm going to bounce out of here. There's something good going on next door in this awesome country." And he leaves. And guys, when you have money, who's your friend? Everybody is your friend. Everybody wants to be your buddy when you've got money and you just want to spend it. And this guy probably lived high on the hog, spending money, hanging out. But money doesn't last forever. And he spent all of it. All gone. And for a Jewish man, a young Jewish man, he had to get a job because he didn't have enough money to make it back home. And he gets a job feeding pigs. For us, we don't mind feeding pigs because personally I love bacon. And if you've ever worked with a pig, let me tell you, you look forward to the day you can turn that pig into bacon. Because they're the most annoying creatures in the world. Every day I have to be around a pig. I'm like, somebody's going to eat you one day, and I cannot wait for that day to come. But he has to go work with pigs. Jewish people, for them, swine were unclean. They weren't allowed to eat them according to the law. This would have been like something below what he was called to do, what he was supposed to do. And then it gets so bad, he doesn't even have enough money to buy himself food. And he gets to the point, and he's so hungry that he looks at the garbage and the slop they're feeding the pigs, and he says, "That looks good." He literally looks at the garbage they're feeding pigs and thinks to himself, maybe put a little bit of mayonnaise on that, that'd be all right. And then he realizes how low he has sunk. And all of a sudden, everything is crystal clear for this young guy. And he knows he has messed up, and so he schemes again. His mind starts working, and he says, man, my dad has hired help that eat better than I do. Maybe Dad will just let me have a job. And in this young man's defense, at least he didn't presume that his dad still owed him more, which is what a lot of young people do nowadays. There's a sense of entitlement that just runs real deep in young people nowadays. But this young man was beyond broken. And he just thinks to himself, he even plans out his apology. He plans out his apology. This guy knew he was in trouble. He knows he has to say, sorry, Dad. Can I please have a job so I can have some food to eat? And he goes back to the house. Makes his way back. And while he's still coming, somebody sees him. The word makes its way back up to the house where the father is. Now, the man was rich. He had money. He was a dignified Jewish man. Dignified Jewish men did not run. Didn't. One, they wore outfits that made running difficult. Have y'all ever tried to run in a dress? That's essentially what they were wearing. They didn't have pants, didn't have athletic shorts. They had a garment that went all the way down, and they usually had a coat or cloak or something that they put over it. You cannot run in that. Also, they wore sandals. Have you ever tried to run in sandals? There's a reason grown Jewish men did not run, because you look stupid. Do you know what you have to do when you're wearing a long thing that goes to your feet and you need to run? You got to hike it up, you got to grab it in the middle and the back, and you got to hold it, and then you got to run. You look like an idiot. And no dignified individual wants to look like that, running around. These guys were his servants, but they were also his employees. He was the boss. What would you do if you saw your CEO of the corporation you worked for running through there in a dress, holding it up, looking like a goofball? A lot of respect would go down for the most part. Jewish men did not run for this reason, but he saw his son and he did not care. He didn't care about what anybody thought about him because he loved that boy. And to him, he assumed the kid was dead. It was a logical assumption. He took off with money. He's going to get killed and robbed. The dad knew the kid was young and stupid. And in his heart, he probably had already resigned to the fact the kid was gone. And when he saw him coming, the dad didn't even slow down. He ran and he hugged him up, and the kid could barely get the apology out of his mouth. The dad did you notice the dad didn't even acknowledge the apology? Because he knew that it took a lot for that kid to come back. And the first thing he wants to do is celebrate, which fits with the theme of the other two parables that Jesus tells before this. There was a lost sheep, there was a lost coin, there was celebration when they were found. And he commands everybody to get the party started, crank up the grill, go kill the fatted calf. That's it, the work day is over, we're all going to celebrate. And then we have a story of the second brother, the other brother. The other brother was doing everything right. He was still at home. He was still working his dad's fields. He was still doing the things that the older brother was supposed to do. He was being responsible. And then all of a sudden he's like, is that a party going on at the house? And nobody came to get me? And so as he starts trying to investigate, he calls a servant and he says, what's going on? And the servant says, your brother's back. And your dad's throwing a party. And this just really soured in that son's heart. And that son, who had stayed and been doing his work, who had been diligent, and there's a lot that goes into his heart and what was going on, he became resentful of the fact that the dad was celebrating a son that came home. And for the second time, we see the dad leave the home and go to where his son is. He went and met the first son. And the second son, he went and met him. And when you listen to the second son, he sounds just as juvenile and childish as the first. Yes, he stayed and he worked. But he says, son, why are you upset? And what does he say? You wouldn't even let me have a goat for a party. And you killed the young fattened calf for this guy? I just wanted to have a goat for me and my friends so we could have a little shindig by the pool. And now, what? He sounds spoiled. He sounds rotten. But notice the fact that being a dad, this dad had to love both of his rotten sons. And for one son, he had to let that boy go and let the world chew him up and spit him out. And as a dad, that's the worst thing ever, to have to let your kids go. They may be grown, whatever. Your heart never changes. They're still little bitty. And when they scrape their knee, you would still pick them up and love them and kiss it better and doctor them. That never changes in your heart when you're a father. Never changes. And it is so hard to let those babies go into this awful world that we live in now. And then the second-hand situation is that the dad has another son who has a begrudging heart towards his own brother. That dad loves both of these boys. They're brothers. They've grown up together. They've been together. But now you've got one kid that's out here in a field throwing a fit because he's so upset. But the dad still makes time to go to him and to try to work things out and to try to reach out to him and to try to explain to him what it is to love a son, what it is to love another person. The truth is that if you're a dad, the moment that you become a dad, your job never ends until you die. You're a dad from that day forward. And being a dad is difficult. We see in this story these attributes. The dad in this story represents God the Father. That's a no-brainer. You guys know that. God, the beautiful thing is that God goes to meet us wherever we are, no matter how stupid we're being. Little hint, don't go home tonight and be like, dear Lord, I'd like to cash out my inheritance and do whatever I want. It's a bad idea, okay? This is a good story to not do that. The father in this story was wise. This is hard. The father in this story was willing to let children make their own mistakes. Does God let you make your own mistakes? The father in this story was patient. The father in this story was understanding. The father in this story was forgiving. And the best part, the thing that we should all walk out of here excited about, is the father in this story was overjoyed when we had ran away, but we came back to him. He was excited that we came back. He never stopped loving us. Just like this kid who took his money and blew it, spent it on prostitutes and gambling and stupidity. He didn't care about the money. He was just happy to have his kid back. Being a dad is tough, and we have a difficult example to live up to because God the Father is our example. We have so many responsibilities, emotional, disciplinary, and we represent the final say in a lot of things. And there has been this weird thing that has happened in culture. There has been an erosion of what it means to be a dad. I can remember being little, and we didn't have cable because we lived in the middle of nowhere. And we had to watch TV shows that were in syndication. Y'all know what syndicated TV is like. We watched a lot of Beverly Hillbillies and Leave It to Beaver and all those funny, goofy shows. And I was thinking about how dads have been portrayed on TV. And I thought about Leave It to Beaver. And Mariah and I were talking about this the other day. In the show Leave It to Beaver, Ward and June would tell Beaver, don't do this. But then Beaver, sometimes with the help of Eddie Haskell, would think, I think this is a good idea to do this. And then they would do it. And guess what happened? The exact same thing that Ward told him would happen. It happened every time. And guess who got into a huge mess? The Beav. And what happened at the end of every episode? Beaver got called into the den, where Ward was sitting there with his shirt and tie on, all these books it's like going to the principal's office. I thought, I am so glad my dad does not have a den. That is terrifying. And he would be called in, and Ward would get onto the Beav, and he corrected him, he disciplined him, and he sent him to bed, and he loved him. And Ward was portrayed as this ultimate figure of dadhood. Now I'm gonna shift gears and I'm gonna move us to modern day television. How are dads portrayed on every single modern day television show? Every show they're portrayed as a bungling idiot that is incapable of doing anything. They are made out to be fools in every show, ignorant in every show, not understanding. Oftentimes they are just like a B character to what goes on. We have changed. I cannot think of a single show where the father of a family is portrayed as being dignified and wise. They're not done like that anymore. That was on purpose. Because if you can erode the authority of a father in a home, y'all ever, we watch a lot of children's TV. Do you know what the main focus of every children's TV show, young kid TV show is right now? It's children doing whatever they want with no parental responsibility or authority. And they're always right. Eli, if you hear him talking about Catboy, he's watching a TV show right now. It's a cute little show. It's got a bunch of kids that, when you sit back as a parent and watch this show, you're like, who thought this was a good idea? These kids don't sleep at night. They didn't put on pajamas and go out and fight crime. You never see their parents. They don't get in trouble for anything. So we've had this cultural shift to where these kids are the ultimate authority. Mariah and I were talking, we talk a lot at our house about deep issues because, we're nerds like that. So we're talking about these protests and these kids out doing things. And I was talking to her, I was like, because when I was studying and getting ready for this sermon, I thought, it doesn't surprise me. This seems to fit the equation. This is what the media has been changing our mindset for years, that a 16-year-old kid can go out and protest and they are right no matter what. Because there aren't dads to whoop their bottoms and tell them, this is not how you behave. This is wrong. There aren't dads to tell them, you will be home by 9 o'clock and go to sleep. There aren't dads to tell them, I love you. And there aren't dads to show them what that love looks like on a daily basis. Because our culture has told children that they're right and that dads are always morons. And that is the biggest tragedy. And I'm not saying that every dad is perfect. Because we're not. Sometimes we are morons. That happens. We do our best. But we can never live up to the potential that our Heavenly Father has. I saw a TED Talk the other day. I don't actually watch as much TV as I watch documentaries and informational videos. And the TED Talk was about how a recognized part of life that adults must go through to be healthy, happy, and productive is that they must spend a portion of their 20s and 30s deconstructing what happened in their childhood, accepting it, and moving forward. And we don't have... And I thought to myself, how bad is it you have to spend 2 decades of your life trying to detox from how your parents screwed you up? And I thought back to this same situation again as I was studying and getting ready. It's because we don't have parents that are necessarily, and I'm talking about moms too at this point. We don't have parents that are respected as the authority in the home. We don't have parents that try, and we don't have parents that model a Christ-like attitude, forgiveness and asking for forgiveness. Because the truth is that even the best parents are going to make mistakes. Even the most godly, sincere Christian moms and dads are going to make a mistake. You can't do everything right. But you know what the most powerful thing that a dad or a mom can do for their child is? When your kid is little, you are their everything. You're strong. You're their superhero. If you say it, if you say the moon is made out of cheese, that kid's going to go to school and tell everybody that my dad said the moon is made out of cheese. When I was a little kid in the first grade, we used to open up our Transformer lunchboxes and eat our sandwiches and talk about whose dad was stronger. And I saw my dad pick up a whole tire. Well, my dad picked up a refrigerator. Well, my dad can beat up your dad. And that's how that happened. We thought our dads were amazing. And then we grew up a little bit more. And we realized maybe our dads maybe they goof up a little bit sometimes. And then we grew up a little bit more. And we began to realize more and more that our dads were people. And then for me, I'm going to tell you the truth, I began to hold that against my dad. I began to resent my dad for not being the perfect dad, for not giving me everything I thought I could have needed, for not emotionally being there, or financially being there. I think every high school kid gets to the point where they realize that their parent is flawed. And let me tell you what I have determined is, as believers, when we get to that point that our kids are beginning to see through the mystique of dadness, that's the moment we need to point them to the real Father. The Heavenly Father, God our Father, that isn't going to screw up. Because the truth is, it doesn't matter how old you get, you still need a dad. My dad has been gone for 6 years. And I think about him every day almost. I think about, it's been 6 years and sometimes I still pick up the phone and try to call him. Because we always need a dad. But I'm going to tell you, we have a Heavenly Father that loves us and cares for us. And He can be everything your dad was, everything your dad wasn't. He can be everything that you need. Everything that you need. I grow up, the older I get, the more I realize I'm still just a goofy kid. Sometimes I need to get sent to my room. That's just the truth. Sometimes I goof up. Sometimes I, even though I don't like to admit it, but sometimes I'm there demanding my inheritance. Being, God, give me what you owe me. Guys, we're going to have just a time of invitation this morning. And we're going to just take a moment and sing, pray together, and then sing together Amazing Grace, and we're dismissed. But what I want you to walk out of here knowing today, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is that you have a Father that loves you. You have a Father that loves you so much that if you were to turn around from all the stupid stuff you're doing right now and turn back to Him, He would run to meet you wherever you are. And He would grab you up and love you like you've never been loved. And He will return you to His right hand and keep you there. And if there's not a more beautiful Father's Day story than that, I don't know what is. Let's go to the Lord in prayer.